Alright, today we are going to learn about literal equations and how to solve them. We will be given a certain variable and an equation, and we will have to solve for that certain variable. So let's get started. Alright, so our first problem here, we've got 2x minus z equals m, and it says solve for x. So as you can see, we've got other variables that we're not used to. Before, we were used to seeing something like 2x minus 5 equals 11, for example, something like that. Well, we would try to get the x all by itself. In order to do that, we would add 5 to both sides. Okay, those would cancel out, and that would leave us with 2x equals 16. Well, let's try that over here. We're solving for x. First thing we want to get rid of is anything that's adding or subtracting with the x. And we see that there's a minus z. To get rid of the minus z, we add z to both sides. So these will cancel out, and that leaves us with 2x equals. Now over on this one right here, we were able to do 11 plus 5, and that gave us 16. But m plus z, are those like terms? No, so we can't actually combine them together. So what we would write is just m plus z. Okay, now going over to the right side, to continue with that equation, the next step would be to divide by 2. Those would cancel out, and we get x equals 8. So looking at the equation on the left side, what we would do is divide by 2, divide everything over here by 2. Those cancel out, and that leaves us with x equals m plus z divided by 2. And that would be your final answer. Notice the whole purpose of this, whenever it says to solve for x, you're trying to get the x all by itself. Let's try another example. Alright, example 2. This time we need to solve for m. Alright, so remember the first thing we try to do is we're working backwards on our order of operations. So we need to get rid of anything that's being added or subtracted. And we are solving for m. So that means we need to first get rid of this minus 3n. To get rid of a minus 3n, we add 3n to both sides. Now, these are going to cancel out, and that leaves us with 4m, and then 8 plus 3n. That does not equal 11n. Remember, these are not like terms. So what I would write is 8 plus 3n. Or you could write 3n plus 8. And that would be the commutative property of addition that tells us it's okay to write 3n plus 8. Alright, now remember, we're trying to get the m all by itself. There's a 4 in front of it, being multiply. To get rid of multiplication, we divide. So we're going to divide both sides by 4. Those are going to cancel out, and that gives us m equals 8 plus 3n all over 4. Or you might see m equals, and they could actually do 8 divided by 4, which gives you 2 plus 3n divided by 4. You could see it either way. All right, let's move on. All right, example 3. Now we are solving for k. So now, as you remember from previous examples, because this is a division bar and the left side, everything's being divided by 5, we have to get rid of that division first. Because everything on that left side is being divided, we have to get rid of that division first. So how do we get rid of division? we multiply. So we're going to multiply both sides by 5. These are going to cancel out, and then on the left side we're left with k minus 2. And then on the right side, 11j times 5. Now whenever you multiply, it's okay if they're not like terms. That's only with adding and subtracting. So we can do 11j times 5, and that's going to give us 55j. Now remember, we're trying to get that k all by itself. Now we see that there's a minus 2 with it, so we need to do the inverse, which is add 2 to both sides. Those are going to cancel out, and that gives us k equals, and remember, 55j plus 2, they are not like terms, so all we write is 55j plus 2. And that is your final answer. Alright, I believe the next slide is a quiz question, so try your best on that, and let's see how you do. Okay, now with example 4, now we've got a formula here that you should look familiar to you. It says volume, or V, equals length times width times height. And we're going to solve for W. So the first things that we're going to do is we need to get that W all by itself. And we see that there's an L and an H with it. Well, what is that H doing to the W? It's multiplying. So the inverse of multiplying is divide. So we're going to divide both sides by L. But we also see that the H is also multiplying, so we can go ahead and get rid of that too by dividing by H on both sides. Now over here on the right side, the L's are going to cancel out, the H's are going to cancel out, and we are left with that W on the right side. And then over on the left side, none of these will cancel out. It's just going to be V divided by length times height. And that's what your answer would look like solving for W. All right, let's move on to example 5. Example 5, this is another formula that looks familiar. Area equals 1/2 base times height. And this is the formula for area of a triangle. So now what they're wanting us to do is to solve for H. So I find H over here, and I see that I need to get rid of a 1/2 and the B. Well, let's first get rid of the B. We see that the B is being multiplied, so the inverse of that is divide. So let's go ahead and divide by B on both sides. The B's will cancel out, and that gives me A divided by B equals 1/2 times H. All right, and now we see that we still need to get that H by itself. It's got a 1/2 being multiplied. So how do we get rid of 1/2 that's being multiplied to H? Well, normally you would say divide, but remember, we don't divide fractions. What do we do with fractions? We multiply by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2/1. So I'm going to multiply by 2/1 on the right side, 2/1 on the left side. So those are going to cancel out, and that leaves us with H on the right side. And then on the left side, 2 times A is 2A. And then 1 times B is B. And so our final answer here is H equals 2 times A divided by B. All right, if you've got any questions, please let me know in class.